MartiniInTheMorning.com. Frank Sinatra, born 99 years ago today. Frank Stallone in the studio. We got the idea for Frank to come back in on what day were we talking the other day? It was
what
day were you? Monday, Tuesday?
Yeah,
Frank was in to talk about his show at Vibrato. How'd that go, by the way?
it was sold. It was sold out usually before the holidays. It
can be a little dicey.
It was. I was talking to Eden Alpert, who runs it, Herb Alpert's daughter, and I said, "Well, we'll hope it's okay," because I know people are shopping. It ended up being packed. Arnold Schwarzenegger came with the whole table. Jimmy Caan was there, and we got like 2 encores. It was one of those nights where it all locked in. We really locked in.
And I was locked in bed that night.
Well. I should have been in bed, but that's, you got to do it. But the thing was, which is really good with our shows when we play around town, I know it's working because when you start seeing all new faces coming in, that means that the word of mouth is going.
Yeah, it's getting around.
Yeah.
It's the same with us. I mean, one of the things we watch here on a radio station, it's one of the reasons we watch Facebook so closely. We look for new folks joining in because they're getting the word. It's funny, speaking of Facebook, I got a note this morning from Jack Melnick, who lives in London. And a year ago, today, we were at the Friars Club. In fact, we were actually invited back to celebrate Frank Sinatra's birthday. He was the abbot of the Friars Club, which is basically the president. He was the abbot for, I want to say, I should have had Ralph call him. I could have asked him. I think Frank was the abbot of the Friars Club for like 12 years, and the Friars Club was a legendary hangout for folks in the entertainment business. Anyway, we were there doing a live broadcast, and this fellow Jack Malnick, who actually just wrote from London, he contacted me before we got there, and some friends of his from Switzerland, the Bennett family, Don Bennett's family, they were going to be in New York shopping for the holidays, and anyway, we invited them over to the Friars Club, and they hung out, and we interviewed them, and so now Jack is one of the people that are sending in requests. We do a contest, Frank, if you're not familiar with it, called it's our Sinatra at 6 thing. At 6 a.m. and 6 p.m. Pacific time, we play 3 Sinatra songs. And on Friday, we invite listeners to submit their Sinatra at 6. So we've got people, and they can win today. They can win the Frank Sinatra Las Vegas box set. So Jack just sent his in. He said, these are no-brainers, I think. Loving your show as always. His songs are Something Stupid, Summer Wind, and New York, New York. If you had to pick 3 Sinatra songs, I mean, you're a guy you've been in the music business, you've performed a lot of this music. If you had to pick 3 Sinatra songs, what would they be?
I think I would look. I kind of love the Sinatra and Strings album. I love I would probably. God, it's so many. I can't even go there.
I know. I try to pin Marianne. Yeah, she can't.
I tend to go for the. But there's some of the stuff that he did with Axel Stordahl, the early stuff in the 40s that I like. And he, like you said, he redid a lot of those songs when he started working with Nelson and Gordon Jenkins.
And that's one of the cool things, too, is that, in fact, our winner from
Where Are You is one of the great songs.
Right there, look there.
How about Didn't We? Do you know that song?
Didn't We, but I like it better by Richard Harris.
Well, no, there's nobody that can touch that song, really.
I think that, I tell you, which I loved, I thought was one of his greatest albums was when Old Blue Eyes is back. When he came back, You Will Be My Music,
great
Send
song.
in the Clowns. I mean, that's a great, I don't know why he retired. Like, he wasn't even that old. He was like 58.
No.
MartiniInTheMorning.com. Frank Stallone hanging out with us as we celebrate the 99th anniversary of the birth of Frank Sinatra. We have a lot of friends over the course of time here at Martini in the Morning, and back to the old radio station. We've been doing this genre for 12 years and sort of taking advantage of the renaissance of this music. And we meet people from time like Frank. I mean, I would have had no idea that you had known Frank Sinatra, and that you'd had that connection. Another friend recently, we told the story about a year ago that Mother Miriam had a hot date coming up, and I said as the day of the date arrived, I said, so you're all excited about your date? She said, no, actually it's been canceled because the guy I was going to go out with had a heart attack. He was so excited about his impending date with Mother Miriam, he had a heart attack. Right, Brad?
I think that's true.
His name is Brad Herman.
Good morning.
So we met. A few months ago, we finally, Mother Miriam wanted Brad and I to meet, and you're one of the many people that we bump into around LA that for one reason or another had an opportunity to get to know Frank Sinatra.
By the way, good morning, Miriam, and good morning, Brad, and good morning, Frank.
There you go.
Morning.
So how did you got a chance to know Frank Sinatra pretty well through business, didn't you?
Well, yeah, I did. What I do is I manage real estate, art collections, memorabilia, and collectable and vintage car collections for a lot of interesting people over the last 30 or so years.
Right.
And Mr. Sinatra was referred to me by a few different people. He was referred to me initially by Ernest Borgnine. He was referred to me by Burt Reynolds. He was referred to me by Joey Bishop. And initially, when I first met him, I was asked to help him get his driver's license because he had been pulled over, a very minor traffic ticket. And the officer said, Mr. Sinatra, we've got two problems. One, you were speeding. That's not an issue. Two, your driver's license is expired.
Oops.
And oops. And Mr. Sinatra said, oh, I didn't realize that. And the officer said, well, Mr. Sinatra, it expired 17 years ago. When was the last time you were at the DMV? About 18 years ago, I guess. So my job was to get him into the Santa Monica DMV and get him to pass the test and get him legal. And we were friends thereafter. I got him out of that mess, and we were friends thereafter. And it was a great, long relationship. And on his birthday, I recall him with fondness and with warmth, and as a man of... the world is well aware of his talents. I don't remember him that way. I remember him as a man of humor and a man of remarkable, surprising modesty and a man of grace. Those are my memories of him.
Hey, Brad, thank you. It's always nice. You know, I never got a chance to meet Frank Sinatra. I met Frank Jr., Nancy, and Tina, but it's nice to get to know somebody who had a chance to work with Frank Sinatra when he was still with us. It's Martini in the Morning. One of the songs Frank Stallone just mentioned, we're going to fudge a little bit on the copyright rules. We're going to play a couple extra Sinatra songs. Frank Sinatra on Martini in the Morning.
All the songs are out of tune.
MartiniInTheMorning.com. You know, it's funny, if anybody you talk to, we're celebrating, it's the 99th anniversary of the birth of Frank Sinatra. Anybody you talk to, it's like, even though we all know the music relatively well, when you put somebody on the spot and you try to name, you know, a Sinatra song, it's like with our Sinatra at 6 contest. We ask people, give us 3 Sinatra songs you'd like to hear on Sinatra at 6. And if you do, like this morning, our winner from this morning was Nicole Zada from Hurleyville, New York, and she picked My Funny Valentine, the up-tempo version of Night and Day, and I Won't Dance. But when you put people on the spot, it's hard. I mean, even you.
I know. I can say from when I was a kid, one of the songs that I sang a lot, when I'm talking the 50s, would be probably All the Way. It was a big hit. Well, that was on the radio. That was a hit. And I remember that, and Chicago. Those were great songs. But I actually kind of grew up in that era when he... the comeback, you know, when he did all the other stuff, when he started working with Nelson and Billy May, because he had that dry period, you know?
Right?
But that I mean, he had a great comeback.
You know, it's interesting that one of the Sinatra 6 requests I just saw a minute ago. The one from Jack Malnick in London. Mm-hmm. He picked, the top of his list was Something Stupid, and everybody thought.
Now that would be my least.
Your least favorite?
Yeah, I mean that's like Lee Hazelwood. It's like, you know, okay.
But what was funny about that song, and we get a lot of requests for it. The funny thing about that song is that was in 1967, yeah. and a lot of people, the people that were Frank Sinatra fans
didn't like it.
They all said, "Well, how nice of Frank to
get
help
Nancy." Yeah.
But the truth of the matter was,
she had a hit already.
Nancy Sinatra was the highest charting female artist of 1967.
Yeah,
it wasn't Nancy it wasn't Frank doing Nancy a favor. It was Nancy doing Frank a favor.
No, Nancy had Boots, Sugartown. Yeah, she had some hits with Lee Hazelwood already. Yeah.
All right, I'm definitely cheating on the copyright rules. Frank Sinatra and Nancy with Frank Stallone's least favorite.
You know what you tell him? Sue me. Yeah.
Martini in the Morning.com, written by Lee Hazelwood, Nancy Sinatra with her dad, and but it was funny though. Everybody thought Frank's lending giving his name to Nancy's career, but Nancy was a hot one at the time.
Well, I did the same thing with Dionne Warwick. This was for Staying Alive and I did a duet with her. They never released it, but it was pretty awesome with Tom Bell, who did all the stylistic stuff.
Tom Bell.
Yeah. So that
my
was
favorite Elton John album was the Tom Bell sessions.
Yeah, Philadelphia Freedom.
It was a fabulous.
Yeah, and so I kind of was privy to that myself. But
Martini in the Morning.com, Frank Stallone visiting to help us celebrate. We're going to call in a few minutes a guy that we've had in the studio before, and he told some great stories. He spent I think 12 years opening for Frank Sinatra, Tom Dreesen, who probably would have been in. I don't know if he would have come in the rain, but
no, that takes a different character.
Pioneer.
To drive through those puddles.
A trailblazer.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Southern California, we're just not used to driving in wet. Here we got people listening.
Well, Tom's from Chicago, so he could make it.
He could handle it.
Yeah, he could handle it.
We got people listening around the country who slogged through feet of snow, and we're complaining about a little rain, but that's what we do here in Southern California. Yeah. I have to catch up on sponsors real quickly. Mother Miriam, or actually Jay Nichols in Omega Bay, Texas, just reminded me. He said, I missed your ride around the block today. My wife/boss had me doing other things. She should know better than to disrupt my 10 a.m. Central virtual ride. Jay, thank you for the reminder. Our sponsors on Martini in the Morning, Cindy Covington with an opportunity in the pet industry, one of the fastest growing business segments today. If you love animals, want to work for yourself and create a great income stream, get in touch with Cindy via email, AuntCindyPetCare@gmail.com for more information. Also, Ken Kessler in Kansas City with the new makeup of our legislative bodies. It's important that you let your officials know your opinion. Go to USA.gov, look up your state and federal legislators, your congressmen, your senators, and so on, and let them know your issues. USA.gov is a great resource for contacting your legislators. Also, the Reluctant Gourmet, G. Stephen Jones, the ultimate foodie from your neighborhood. Mm-hmm. He's in Philadelphia. We all have fears, but cooking doesn't have to be one of them. Find them online at reluctantgourmet.com. Also from the Philly area, Glenside, Pennsylvania?
I know of it.
From Glenside, Pennsylvania, our staff genealogist, Valerie Neidick Moran, FamilyLinksYou.com. A family heritage is a link to our past. Let's not forget their story is our own.
I don't want any links to my past. Thank you very much. No, I'm kidding.
Frank Stallone, when you started doing this music,
yeah.
Because you've done all kinds of things before, but when you started doing this music, was it intimidating to you to think about doing Frank Sinatra?
No, not at all. No, not at all. I mean, I came from a place where like a year and a half before, 2 years before, was nominated for a Grammy, a Golden Globe. So I was coming from a big place, but the problem was the business changed overnight. It started getting urban, hip hop. It became less singer-songwriter oriented, So I mean, unless you were like the Eagles or something like that. But even with them, a lot of these groups stopped having the hits that they had because it became all you needed was a guy with a synthesizer sit there in his bedroom and make hip hop records. So I figured for myself I would try something different. And no, I wasn't intimidated at all because I always sang that kind of music and I always loved it and I could sing it because I had done it all the years playing in bars and stuff. So it didn't bother me at all.
How did you? What was the connection? Because I know Nancy connected you with Billy May for your Frankie and Billy album. How did you wind up getting to know Frank Sinatra and the family?
Well, that was through Nancy. That was through Nancy because Nancy sometimes would invite me over to the house when she lived in Beverly Hills, or when the story I told last week when he tried to jump into my Bronco and hit the town. That was from Trader Vic's, and Nancy invited me because Frank was feeling a little down because Sammy had just passed, and and his world was shrinking a little bit. Dean was gone, Sammy was gone, Peter Lawford was gone. Well, not that he really cared about that, but I'm just saying. So his kind of inner circle was kind of Jilly was gone. So, no matter how famous you are, these were your kind of go-to people, and it just changed a little bit. And I had the same manager as Frank for a while, Elliot Weissman. So That's kind of how the connections. I remember the first time I met Frank. It was unbelievable. I'm never at a loss for words or a shock because I lived with the biggest action star in the history.
You're never at a loss for words?
No, never. I live with the biggest action star in the history of movies. Okay, so it wasn't. I've been around it.
Yeah.
First time I saw Frank, I was kind of like, wow. Okay, I've seen this face almost since the beginning of time. The blue eyes, and I'm walking up to him. It's at a concert at backstage, and John Stamos was there, and his mother took the picture of Frank and I backstage, and it was really pretty amazing. It was pretty amazing.
I would think it would be.
Yeah, it was, because for me, the movie star is one thing, but for a singer, and I'd met Tony Bennett. He wrote the liner notes for the albums that you'll be giving away next week in Love in Vain. I'd met Tony, I'd met Billy Eckstein, I'd met all the Mel Torme, Steve Allen. I'd met them all, but Frank was a different thing. It's like meeting John Lennon or something. Yeah, so. Frank
Stallone joining us to celebrate the 99th anniversary of the birth of Frank Sinatra. MartiniInTheMorning.com. Well, I'm going to be in real trouble with the copyright cops. Frank Sinatra on Martini in the Morning.
Saturday night is the loneliest night in the week.
MartiniInTheMorning.com. So was that intentional? I mean, the Billy May
Absolutely.
Doing some of those songs?
Billy was over the house, and I must tell you, for the faint-hearted, you could not work with him. He was very demanding. He was very abrupt. He could be very moody, and that was what he was known for. His music was like his personality. So, and I'm paying him, and he's over at my house, and he was like a taskmaker. So. And, he didn't know anything about my Grammys, and he really couldn't care.
Right.
But he ended up liking me because I hired him, and I said, do what you want.
How old was Billy when you worked with him?
Well, 1990, I guess he was in his 70s. And I got to tell you, after we did the album, and I sent him home, he was not a complimentary, he was just kind of a curmudgeon guy. His wife was lovely.
Like Mother Miriam.
Yeah, and he was very complimentary. He goes, man, you did a great job. And you see the liner notes he wrote about me, comparing the fun he had with Sinatra and Nat King Cole to me. And all of a sudden, I remember I was in the studio in the booth, and I was sitting there. I wasn't nervous because he was so demanding. Where Sammy was like easygoing, Billy go like this. All right, ready? 2 bars, bang. And you better know it. And all of a sudden, I fudged something. He stopped. He goes, Frank, you've had the stuff here. What are you doing? In front of everybody. And I'm embarrassed. And then the next take, I nailed it. And I'll remember Pete Condoli looked over at me like this with the cigar he does, gave me a thumbs up, because they were Italian, Italian guys. And then the session just went great. But some of the guys were older guys from the 30s and 40s, and they think everything should have stopped in the 40s. But a lot of the guys like Pete Jolly were great, and they were happy because it was a gig. Most of these guys weren't working.
Right.
And so here you go. Here's a Billy May session, a new one. Brand new stuff, brand new charts happening now. And these guys are going, yeah, okay. Because Billy was really revered. I mean, there's a few guys in that thing that were really there, and he was one of them.
Right.
And so was Nelson Riddle. And Don Costa was great.
Don Costa
was great. Yeah. They was great. But so I was very fortunate, and unfortunately for these young guys coming up, they'll never get that, because the new guys are okay, but they're not legends.
Yeah.
It's interesting that God bless Ron Jones, who is through his work with Seth MacFarlane on Family Guy, is a lot of the guys like Gene Cipriano, who we had in the studio not long ago, and also I'm going to forget the other great sax player, tall guy. His wife plays the trombone.
What's his name?
Oh, I know. Yeah.
Not Frank.
I can't think of it.
I'll think of it in a second. But anyway, Ron is making it possible for a lot of these guys to be working. But you're right. I mean, and the other problem is, and Frank Sinatra Jr. told me this. I asked Junior. I shouldn't call him Junior. The family calls him Frankie. I can't call him Frankie.
And his nieces call him Uncle Funny.
Uncle Funny?
Yeah.
I love that. So Frank and I were in the car one day. We were working on the old radio station, and I said, whatever happened? What really happened to your father's music? What made that music decline? He said 2 things. He said the decline in music education in schools, because, and I remember, and Frank, you'll remember this because we're close in age.
Yeah.
When I was a kid, once, twice, 3 times a week, we would have a music appreciation class, and we would listen to. I remember distinctly this show on Stephen Foster. We were learning about Stephen Foster. We were learning about the music of previous generations, and kids don't get that today.
No, they don't.
And so Frank said lack of music education in schools is a huge issue. So we don't have kids going to school and learning these big band charts. I played big band stuff in through school on my trumpet. That's all gone. So he said the other thing was the way radio was treating this music. He said there was one network in particular that he mentioned that he said think about how many songs Frank Sinatra, songs and albums that he named that he had the word swing in them. He said the way it's presented on the radio does not swing. And he said that chased younger people away from the music.
Frank Jr. is very astute. He knows his music. I mean, he gave me a nice compliment because I gave him the Billy May album when I was over at Nancy's house for watching the Frank Sinatra Story. Remember that was on the 90s when the guy played Frank? And I don't think Mr. Sinatra was thrilled about the TV movie, but so I gave Frank Jr. the Billy May. And you got to understand, me being Frank Stallone, giving Frank Sinatra Jr. a Billy May album of a new Billy May stuff, it could have gone either way, but he was very complimentary. He's a music guy. You know, if it's BS, he'll let you know it's BS. But if he likes it, I mean, listen, look what he grew up with. And he's very generous. I mean, I needed to borrow a chart once for a thing, and he's very generous. He's a nice guy.
Very smart guy. I was looking
He's really smart.
Miriam, what was the song that you said when I was asking you about Frank Sinatra songs? The Peter Allen song. I'll tell you what. I'll find that in a minute. I want to go back to our.
Here's a great album.
Well, didn't we?
Didn't we?
Yes. I want to go back real quickly because I got to find that. I want to go back to our request link. Got a note from Russ Brown in Turner's Falls, Massachusetts. He said, Brad, loving the 99th birthday celebration of Mr. Sinatra. It's interesting how many people like Brad Herman, most people I know who worked with or worked for Frank Sinatra, do not call him Frank. They do not call him Frank Sinatra. They called him Mr. Sinatra. And that was a odd thing to me as I started learning this music.
Then he told me to call him Frank.
I know. But it's interesting, like here with Russ Brown, he capitalizes Mr., making, emphasizing the point. Anyway, he said, loving the celebration. Things like this are exactly why I love Martini in the morning. Well, besides great music, of course. Congratulations also on the 12th anniversary of the old station. Wish I would have been in L.A. to catch it back in the bad old days. You were on. We had you on back when we were on the old station.
Of course, twice.
That was a fun experience because it flew in the face of everything else that was going on the radio, just like what you did.
Exactly.
You were doing music that nobody else was doing at the time.
Well, I was, and and the thing was, like a lot of people, I bankrolled my whole career myself. So, guys like Connick was coming off Harry Met Sally and the other guys. So they had a machine. Michael Bublé had Paul Anka and all these guys behind him.
Foster.
So it makes it, David Foster was brilliant. So it makes it a lot easier. So when you have to do it yourself, so it really has nothing about how good the music is, because there's a lot of albums I've heard out there. I think Harry Nilsson's A Touch of Schmilson's Night is maybe one of the finest standards album I've ever heard, and that's Gordon Jenkins. I don't know what you can say more about that.
I'll tell you a funny story. When we had just put 12 years, today's the 12th anniversary of the old radio station. We just put it on the air. I get a package in the mail from an attorney, and now when I get a thing in the mail from an attorney, it's usually not good news. I opened it up, and it was the Harry Nilsson album.
Stan Blackman sent it.
No,
Bruce Gurkel.
I'll think of his name.
That was his.
I finally met him at a party and reminded him of that. He said,
Lee Blackman.
Lee
Blackman.
Is it Blackman?
Yeah.
So he said, yeah. He said, I turn on the radio one day and I hear this radio station playing this kind of music, and I'm thinking, bet they don't know that Harry Nilsson did all these great songs.
It's one of the finest albums ever of this stuff. I mean, I'm talking for Sinatra, anybody. This is one of the Gordon Jenkins and Harry Nilsson, one of the great singers of the 20th century. He was one. Listen to him live.
You made me love you.
MartiniInTheMorning.com. Harry Nilsson with Gordon Jenkins.
No one did. I must say, no one could orchestrate strings like Gordon Jenkins. He was great. And again, Harry did the same thing I did. No, Harry and I were next door neighbors. We were very, very good friends. He actually produced me. And he said, when I got in touch with Gordon Jenkins, he was like retired. He doesn't think anybody even knew who he was. The same thing with Billy May. When Billy May came in, he goes, "Who's this kid? No one knows who. I haven't had a job in 10 years."
One of the songs, one of the things that's cool today is like Frank. You know, you come in, you've got some Sinatra songs, some albums that are very special to you. One of the things when I met Mother Miriam, you know, I put her on the spot and say, you know, which Sinatra songs really bring it all home for you? And this is one
Jimmy
of them. Jimmy Webb.
One of the finest songwriters.
You and Me, we wanted it all on martiniinthemorning.com. There's your song, Mother Miriam. You and Me, we wanted it all. It's a great. But you mentioned too, though, Richard Harris's version is pretty.
Well, that's maybe one of the great. Can I tell you a funny story? I know Jimmy Webb, and Jimmy Webb. I was just listening right when I pulled in your driveway. I was listening to Galveston. I mean, all the hits he wrote. By the time I get to Phoenix, everything. Didn't we? And that Richard Harris album is one of the great albums with Didn't We? MacArthur's Park.
Yep,
I mean, it's great. And Richard said, you know, I'm not really a singer. I'm a Broadway guy, but he really pulled it off. But Nancy told me that Frank. I'm going to call him Frank because he told me to call him Frank.
I understand.
All right, and he said this. He said that he did a whole Jimmy Webb album. He did it, and they never released it.
Really?
Now, I don't know why, but he did. Jimmy wrote a whole album for Frank Sinatra, but it was a concept album.
Wow.
I would have loved to hear that.
I love Jimmy Webb. I got to work with him when he and Michael Feinstein did an album together.
He's great.
And I had Jimmy and Michael, and then I had Jimmy in later after they had toured together. Fascinating guy.
He is he's very
talented.
fascinating. He's really talented.
9:45, quarter before 10 a.m., celebrating the 99th anniversary of the birth of Frank Sinatra. Got a note from our girlfriend Lynn Menifee from Baltimore, who happens to be in town right now in Southern California. She said, "Cheers to Brad and Miriam on Frank Sinatra's 99th. Saw Frank Stallone last year for my birthday at Vitello's. Great to hear him co-host. Great stories."
Oh, well, thank
you. They love you.
Thank you.
Frank Stallone on martiniinthemorning.com. Let's look at some of the Sinatra at 6 requests were coming in. We will announce this evening's Sinatra at 6 winner during the 2 Martini lunch between noon and 1 Pacific time. Here's one that just came in from Michelle Lopez, listening to Martini in the Morning in Ponce, Puerto Rico. She's requesting New York, New York, All of Me, and Angel Eyes. She said, "I'm kind of new listening to Martini in the Morning. Love your music. My husband and I have a tradition of dancing to New York, New York every Thanksgiving Day. I hope to win today's box set. It'll be a real blessing for us." Thank you for listening, Michelle. Glad you discovered Martini in the Morning. And keep those requests coming. Click on the Sinatra at 6 link at martiniinthemorning.com. What's the story with Mr. Dreesen?
We're going to call him as soon as you give the word.
Okay. So
He's
what?
waiting for a call.
We're going to talk to Tom Dreesen. We have another surprise that we're going to do a couple of times today. Our engineer, Al the engineer, went through his vast Sinatra collection and has put together 2 amazing medleys. Since we have a limit on how many Frank Sinatra songs we can play, we're going to play coming up here at 10 o'clock Pacific. We're going to play the first. I forgot. I hate to admit this to Al. I would have remembered it, but Frank just reminded me when you talked about one particular live album that Frank Sinatra did, The Main Event.
Yes, terrific.
Well, Frank, Al's first medley opens with, do you remember the introduction from The Main Event?
Yeah, Ladies of Tramp.
But do you remember who introduced him?
Howard Cosell.
We've got
That's a great.
We will revisit a great moment in Frank Sinatra's career. That'll be coming up at the top of the hour, 10 a.m. Pacific. In the meantime, it's martiniinthemorning.com. Again, use the Sinatra 6 link and give us 3 Sinatra songs you'd like to hear on Sinatra at 6. If we play yours this evening at 6 p.m. Pacific, you'll win the box set, the Las Vegas box set, which is also a fabulous Frank Sinatra collection.
Love is lovelier.
MartiniInTheMorning.com, Frank Sinatra's second time around as we celebrate the 99th anniversary of the birth of Frank Sinatra. Frank Stallone in the studio helping us with the celebration, Mother Miriam. And on the phone from somewhere in the desert, a fellow who got to know Frank Sinatra, traveled with him, opened for him. We had him on the air here in the studio just a few months ago. Tom Dreesen, welcome back to Martini in the Morning.
Well, I'm glad to be back. Happy birthday, Frank, and hello to Frank Stallone, an old friend and a good guy.
Hi, Tommy.
So listen, you're the first guy that we thought of because you. First of all, when we talked to you, we talked a lot about the days when you were opening for Frank Sinatra, and you had the advantage of standing just off stage after you opened for Frank. You stood just off stage and you watched him perform. So you got a good sense of him as a performer, and you also got a good sense of how the audience responded to Frank Sinatra live. What was that like when you were opening for him?
It's really hard to describe. I was with him 14 years in 45 to 50 cities a year, and to watch him night after night, just electrify audiences by his mere presence sometimes. I mean, to watch Frank Sinatra walk to a microphone, he sometimes created more excitement walking to the microphone than most acts did with their entire act. The energy you would feel, 20,000 people in these arenas, that would just go wild when he made his entrance on the stage, and then he had this uncanny ability to be in a 20,000 seat arena like Nassau Coliseum or something like that, and when he started to sing, he would bring it all down like they were sitting in a saloon with him somewhere. Even the furthest seat up in the arena, somehow Frank could make that huge arena, it would become an intimate bar.
Wow.
And Frank was singing to you, there are so many times in my life that I can remember performances by him that were outstanding, but two stick out for me. One is when you'd go back to New Jersey with him, like Garden State Arts Center, and he was like in his late 70s now, and when he'd walk out on that stage, this is their homeboy, this is the kid from Hoboken that became internationally a major star, and now he was coming home, and how they would greet him when he walked out on that stage, they just could not get enough of him. It was chilling to watch. You'd get chills on you to watch. And then for me, my personal experience, I was a little kid in Chicago. When I was growing up, I shined shoes in taverns and set pins in bowling alleys, and I, grew up raggedy poor. And I used to go to the Chicago Theater, and I would sit in the back of the theater and see Frank Sinatra movies. And now I would come to Chicago with Frank at the Chicago Theater. They had renovated it and put $8 million into it. And now my name was on the marquee with Frank Sinatra in my hometown, where I was a little boy and used to watch those movies. So those are, experiences I'll never forget.
Tom Dreesen on Martini in the Morning. Hey, Tom, you're over in the desert. Are you performing?
Yeah, I'm doing my one-man show at the Helene Galen Theater here tonight. It's my one-man show is called An Evening of Laughter and Memories of Sinatra. So it's stand-up comedy. I mean, the theater goes dark, and a screen comes down, and Dennis Farina, my good friend who's gone now, but he narrates my life for about 4 minutes of film, and then I come out and I do stand-up comedy for about 30 minutes, but I segue over to a bar, and there's a bottle of Jack Daniels on the bar, and I tell a joke at the bar, and then the lights go out, and Frank comes on the screen singing, it's 2:45, there's no one in the place except you and me, and I let that mood set in, and when he gets to the chorus, make it one for my baby and one more for the road, the light hits me, and now the audience is in a bar with me, and I tell him the first time I heard that voice, I was 8 years old, shining shoes in a bar in Chicago, and he was on the jukebox, and then I take the audience from that little boy hearing Frank Sinatra on the jukebox on the south side of Chicago to one day carrying his coffin out of a church in Beverly Hills. So I take them on that journey, and with a lot of laughs, but a lot of tears too. I take them to the funeral, and I give them an insight to this man that I knew, that an insight that from a different perspective. When a man, when you go to a man's funeral, I mean, if everybody there were to get up and speak about this man, the wife she would know him from one area, the mother would know him from another area, his children, but his buddies, his pals, have a totally different perspective of this man, and that's the angle I come from a buddy, a pal.
Tom Dreesen on Martini in the Morning. Tom, thanks for calling. Have a great time tonight as we celebrate the 99th anniversary of the birth of the greatest singer of all time, Frank Sinatra, on martiniinthemorning.com. MartiniInTheMorning.com. One for my baby and one more for the road. What a great description from Tom Dreesen about his show.
Tom's a really nice guy, and he's been around. And I was very blessed to have met Frank Sinatra on a few occasions, know Tony Bennett, get to meet some of these guys, and also open at least 15 times for Don Rickles. And Don Rickles liked me because they come from the old school.
Right.
You come on time, you do your job. And I told you when I was playing at San Miguel Casino, I had like 103 temperature. And I couldn't even move, comatose. I have a show to do. He said, well, I said, I'm not canceling anything. Doesn't work that way. Because I was in New York when Frank Sinatra was doing his 75th birthday at the Meadowlands. The doctor said, Frank, if you go out and say, you'll probably die. You got pneumonia, you're going to die. 75,000, 80,000 people at the Meadowlands. Frank goes, I'm going on. And doctors, Elliot Weissman, they're going nuts. He walks on stage, he's like death warmed over. And it's cold out. First few songs, he struggles. Then he hits it. And then you go on Automatic Pilot. He did one of the great shows. And I said, so there's no way Frank Stallone opening for Don Rickles is going to cancel out when Frank Sinatra has 75,000, 80,000 people at the Meadowlands, and he comes on. And that's my kind of background growing up in music. You do it. Like today, people go, you're not going to the studio. It's flooding. I said, I'll be there. Don't worry about it. And I was here early.
You were. That's right. MartiniInTheMorning.com. Our celebration of the 99th anniversary of the birth of Frank Sinatra continues. We'll have a Frank Sinatra song top of every hour through 6 p.m. Pacific. Again, use the Sinatra at 6 link on our website. Give us 3 Sinatra songs you'd like to hear on Sinatra at 6. And if we play yours this evening on Sinatra at 6 p.m. Pacific time, you'll win the Frank Sinatra Vegas box set. We'll announce the winner between noon and 1 Pacific during the 2 Martini lunch. And now from the creative genius of our engineer, Al Tadeo, Al the engineer, once again we salute Frank Sinatra.